Real sightings, real witnesses, and the files of MUFON. This is the Northland MUFON Case Spotlight. In the spring of 1969, three young men were driving along a quiet country road just outside of Isanti, Minnesota, when they noticed something hovering just ahead of their car. A glowing green light. Silent, low to the ground, moving slowly above the road. But what happened next would leave them questioning the experience for the rest of their lives, because the object made impossible turns without rotating, produced strange waves as distortion in the air, and then shot upward into the night sky. But then, moments later, when the witnesses turned the corner where the craft had just been hovering, they discovered someone walking alone on the road, exactly where the object had stopped. Coincidence? Or something far more mysterious? Across Minnesota and North Dakota, unexplained encounters have been reported for generations. Some were dismissed, others remained unsolved. These are the Northland Spotlight cases. Tonight's case brings us to Isanti, Minnesota, in the spring of 1969. At the time, the area around Isanti, Minnesota was largely rural farmland, long stretches of quiet roads, scattered homes, and very little nighttime traffic. This event occurred sometime in early April of 1969. Sunset at that time of the year occurs around 6:45 p.m., and civil nautical twilight ends shortly after at 7:30 p.m., meaning by 9 p.m., the sky would have been completely dark. And according to the witness, that's when the sighting occurred. The weather that evening was clear, and in 1969 the area had very little light pollution. In other words, it was a very dark night. The primary witness in this case was Aaron Arison, who was 21 years old at the time, and he was accompanied by two of his best friends, Bert Jimmy Johnson, who was home on leave from the Army during the Vietnam era, and Keith Bjornson. The three men were driving together in a 1955 Chevrolet. Cars built in the 1950s often had full bench seats in the front, allowing three adult men to sit comfortably side by side. Although it was the late 1960s, the three men had not consumed any alcohol or drugs that evening. They were completely sober. Aaron knew this was an important detail to share with investigators. Their plan that night was simple. Drive out to the Bar L Country Club and walk around the golf course for a while and enjoy the quiet rural night. They'd reminisce about old times and talk about what Jimmy has missed while he was in Vietnam. It seemed like a simple enough idea, just something to do on a quiet evening. As they drove south along the main road, they approached an intersection roughly 500 feet ahead. Suddenly, one of the passengers leaned forward and looked through the windshield. He said quietly, "Huh?" And then a moment later, "What?" Aaron looked up and immediately slammed on the brakes. Hovering just ahead of the car was a large green light. Aaron jumped out of the vehicle to get a better look while the other two remained inside. The light appeared to be hovering roughly 30 to 40 feet above the ground, and it looked to be about 5 feet in diameter. But the strange thing wasn't just its size. It was the way the light behaved. It didn't shine outward like a spotlight. Instead, Aaron described it as if he were looking into a tube filled with glowing green smoke. The light had depth, but no physical source. It was uniform and even, almost like a glowing cylinder suspended in the air. And because the night was so dark, the witnesses could not clearly see the body of the craft itself. The object slowly moved forward along the road. Then something unusual happened. When the craft reached the intersection ahead of them, it made a perfect 90-degree turn. But the light never moved. The craft had changed direction without turning its body. Think about this for a moment. Aircraft normally bank or rotate when they turn, but this object appeared to simply change direction. How was this possible? The craft continued east for about 100 feet and then stopped. hovering silently in the air for nearly a full minute. Why would it stop there? Was it observing something? Scanning the area? Or perhaps waiting? After about a minute, the object began moving again. Another 100 yards forward, another 90-degree turn without rotating. Now the craft was traveling north, parallel the road, and slowly moving back towards the witnesses. But as the object approached their position, it began to rise. And that's when Aaron noticed something even stranger. As it lifted higher, he was finally able to begin making out the shape of the craft, because something unusual started happening around it. Surrounding the object were waves of distortion, transparent ripples, faintly outlined in green light, almost like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Except these waves were more than 100 feet in the air and completely surrounded the object. The distortion around the craft began to intensify, then suddenly, the craft accelerated. Not gradually, instantly. It shot upward in a steep arc, becoming a bright point of light before disappearing into the night sky. That entire event only lasted seconds. The three men stood there, stunned by what they had just witnessed. They looked at each other, climbed back into the car, and continued driving towards the intersection, each of them trying to process what they had just seen. For a moment, the car was silent. But before they reached the turn, Jimmy finally spoke. "Why do you think that thing stopped over the road?" Aaron shrugged and jokingly replied, "Maybe they dropped someone off." The three men looked at each other and then bursted out laughing. It was a brief moment of levity, something they desperately needed after what they had just experienced. But moments later, as they turned the corner, their laughter stopped. Because there, illuminated in the car's headlights, was a woman walking along the road. They stared at her in stunned silence as they slowly drove past. She appeared to be in her 40s or 50s, wearing a navy skirt and jacket and carrying several shopping bags. But something about the scene didn't make sense. They were far outside of town, nearly 2 miles, and half of that distance was gravel road. What was she doing out there? The bus stop was nearly a mile away. Had she been there the entire time? Or had something else happened entirely? The three men slowly drove past her. None of them spoke, and none of them could stop staring. In any other situation, they might have assumed she had taken a bus back from the cities and was simply walking home. But the bus stop was more than a mile away. The location, the timing, none of it seemed to fit. And that moment would later become Aaron's biggest regret, because they never stopped to ask. And to this day, Aaron still wonders if someone, or something, really had been dropped off that night. Nearly 50 years later, Aaron finally decided to report the event. When asked why he had waited so long to come forward, he explained that while he had occasionally shared this story with close friends and family, it was actually his granddaughter who encouraged him to report it. So at that point, Aaron decided it might finally be time to make the experience official. In his own words, "I just thought it might be important." And he may very well be right. Each report adds another piece to a much larger puzzle, helping investigators better understand the phenomenon and reminding others who have had similar experiences that they are not alone. After contacting MUFON, an investigator was assigned to the case and immediately contacted Aaron to set up an interview and a site visit. During the investigation, the site visit confirmed several of Aaron's recollections. The intersection where the sighting occurred was indeed approximately 500 feet away, just as Aaron had remembered. The location where the woman had been walking was roughly 100 yards farther down the road. Aaron was also asked about several factors commonly associated with close encounters, including possible missing time, unusual physical sensations, or any vehicle malfunctions that may have occurred during the event. None were reported. The car behaved normally, and the witness experienced no unusual physical effects that night, which, in many ways, only deepened the mystery of what they had seen. No radar records, aircraft reports, or conventional explanations were found that could account for the strange green light witnessed that night. One of the most intriguing aspects of the sighting was the distortion waves surrounding the craft. Aaron described the effect as transparent ripples in the air, faintly outlined in green light, almost like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Except these waves were more than 100 feet in the air and appeared to completely surround the object. During the investigation, this unusual phenomenon was compared to observations reported in other well-known cases. Witnesses from the 1980 Rendlesham Forest incident, for example, described seeing similar energy effects surrounding an unidentified craft during a close encounter in the forest. Researcher Carl Feint, in his book UFOs and Water, also documents numerous sightings in which unidentified objects appeared to be surrounded by visible energy distortions or luminous fields. Some researchers believe that these fields may serve multiple purposes, possibly acting as a protective barrier, shielding the craft from its environment, or even functioning as part of the propulsion system itself. Certain physicists have proposed that advanced propulsion systems could involve forms of mass cancellation or gravitational manipulation, allowing the craft to accelerate and maneuver in ways conventional aircraft simply cannot. Whether the field observed in this case served one of those purposes remains unknown, but according to Aaron's account, the distortion appeared to intensify just moments before the craft abruptly accelerated and vanished into the night sky. Today, more than half a century later, the mystery still remains. Was the woman simply someone walking home that night? Or did the witnesses see something far more unusual? A strange craft hovering silently above a rural Minnesota road, stopping there for nearly a full minute before suddenly accelerating and vanishing into the night sky. Because if that craft really was there, then another question becomes impossible to ignore. Why did it stop directly over that stretch of road, just moments before someone appeared there? After reviewing the testimony, examining the location, and conducting the investigation, the case was officially classified as unknown. But for Aaron, the most haunting part of that night was never the object in the sky. It was the woman on the road. Because they never stopped the car. They never asked who she was, or how she ended up walking down that lonely stretch of road. And to this day, Aaron still wonders if someone, or something, was really dropped off that night. And like so many sightings, the questions remain. What was seen that night over the Northland remains unexplained. But somewhere out there, someone else may be seeing something similar, right now. If you witness something unusual in the sky, report it to MUFON.com. Until next time, keep watching the skies.